You went to bed with your blood sugar under control. You didn't eat anything during the night. You slept through without any problems. And yet, you wake up, check your glucose monitor, and the number is higher than when you went to sleep. How is that even possible? If this has happened to you, if your morning blood sugar is consistently higher than expected, despite not eating anything overnight, this video is going to give you the clearest explanation you have ever received for why this keeps happening, because this is one of the most frustrating and most poorly explained experiences in type 2 diabetes management. And today, we are finally going to answer it completely. But before we go any further, tell me in the comments, does this happen to you? Is your fasting blood sugar consistently higher in the morning than it was when you went to sleep the night before? Write it below, because your answer might help someone else who is going through the exact same thing and has never been able to understand why. Let's start with why this is so confusing. For so many people, the logic seems simple. You didn't eat. Your body had nothing to process. So your blood sugar should be stable, or at least lower than it was after your last meal. But that's not what happens. And the reason it doesn't happen comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding about what your body is actually doing during the hours you're asleep. Most people assume that sleep is a passive state, that the body simply powers down, rests, and waits for morning, that without food coming in, blood sugar has nowhere to go but down. That assumption is wrong, and it's wrong in a way that directly explains the high fasting blood sugar that greets so many people with type 2 diabetes every single morning. Your body doesn't stop managing blood sugar when you fall asleep. It continues actively, continuously, and sometimes aggressively throughout the entire night. Hormones keep working. Your liver keeps producing glucose. Regulatory processes keep running. And all of those processes influence your overnight glucose levels from the moment you close your eyes until the moment your alarm goes off. For people with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, those overnight processes can produce blood sugar levels that rise significantly without a single bite of food being involved. That's the mystery. And it has a very specific explanation. Let's go deeper into what's actually happening inside your body between the time you fall asleep and the time you wake up. The first thing to understand is liver glucose release. Your liver has a critical job to do overnight. It acts as your body's internal fuel supply, continuously releasing glucose into your bloodstream to keep your brain functioning, your heart beating, and your organs working through the long fasting period of sleep. This is completely normal. This is supposed to happen, but in people with type 2 diabetes, this liver glucose release is often excessive. The liver releases more glucose than the body actually needs. And because insulin resistance means that glucose isn't being cleared from the bloodstream as efficiently as it should be, that excess glucose accumulates, raising blood sugar through the night, even in the complete absence of food. The second thing to understand is hormonal activity. While you sleep, your body is running a continuous hormonal program. Cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, and other hormones all remain active overnight. These hormones influence how much glucose your liver releases, how sensitive your cells are to insulin, and how efficiently your body can clear glucose from the bloodstream. In the context of type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, these hormonal influences can push blood sugar higher than it would go in someone without the condition, creating overnight glucose levels that rise gradually and persistently through the night. The third thing to understand is the carryover effect of your evening habits. What you ate after dinner, what you drank before bed, what time you went to sleep, how well you slept. All of these things create the metabolic environment in which your body's overnight processes operate. A less favorable evening routine creates a less favorable overnight environment. And a less favorable overnight environment means those natural processes, liver glucose release, hormonal activity, insulin resistance, have more room to push your blood sugar higher than it needs to go. This is why your morning blood sugar is often a reflection, not just of what happened while you slept, but of everything that happened in the hours before you. Close your eyes if you want to understand your diabetes at this level. If you want real explanations, not generic advice, subscribe to Health Insight MD right now. This community is growing fast, and new content goes up every week that most people with diabetes have never had access to before. The people who are here from the beginning are already ahead. Don't miss out, and hit the like button. Now it helps this content reach more people who genuinely need this information. Now, let's talk about the specific process that is responsible for some of the most dramatic and most confusing cases of high morning blood sugar in people with type 2 diabetes. It's called the dawn phenomenon, and it is one of the most important hidden causes of high morning glucose that most people with diabetes have never received a clear explanation for. Here's what happens. In the early morning hours, typically between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m., your body begins preparing to wake up. This is a natural, automatic process driven by your internal biological clock. And as part of that preparation, several hormones begin to rise. Cortisol rises, growth hormone rises, glucagon rises. These hormones serve important functions. They mobilize energy, sharpen alertness, and prepare your body for the demands of the day ahead. But they also do something that is directly relevant to your morning blood sugar readings. They signal your liver to release more glucose, and they temporarily reduce insulin sensitivity, making it harder for your cells to absorb and use that glucose effectively. In people without diabetes, this hormonal surge produces only a modest rise in blood sugar that the body quickly manages. Insulin sensitivity may be slightly reduced, but there's enough reserve capacity to handle it without any noticeable effect on glucose levels. In people with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, there is no such reserve capacity. The liver receives the signal to release glucose and releases it often in excessive amounts. The cells receive insulin but respond to it poorly because of existing insulin resistance, and the glucose that should be cleared from the bloodstream accumulates, instead producing a blood sugar spike that can be significant. That happens before you've eaten a single thing, and that is well underway by the time you reach for your glucose monitor. This is the dawn phenomenon. It affects a large proportion of people with type 2 diabetes, and most of them have never been given this explanation by anyone. The frustration of seeing a high fasting blood sugar reading every morning after doing everything right the day before often traces directly back to this process. Not to something you did wrong, not to something you failed to do, but to a biological phenomenon that was happening in the background while you slept. Understanding it is the first step toward managing it. Here's where things get practical, and here's where the hidden causes of high morning glucose become something you can actually do something about. The dawn phenomenon is real, it's biological, and it happens to some degree in most people with type 2 diabetes, regardless of what they do. But here's what most people don't know. Certain evening habits that cause high fasting glucose amplify the dawn phenomenon significantly, making the morning blood sugar spike much larger and much harder to manage than it would otherwise be. And because these habits happen hours before the spike occurs, and the spike itself happens while you're sleeping, most people never connect them. The first hidden habit is eating too late at night. When you eat close to bedtime, your body is still processing glucose from that meal when the early morning hormonal surge begins. That means the dawn phenomenon is layered on top of an already elevated glucose baseline, producing a morning reading that is substantially higher than either factor alone would create. Finishing your last meal or snack at least 2 to 3 hours before sleep gives your body time to process that glucose before the hormonal surge begins, reducing the starting point from which the dawn phenomenon operates. The second hidden habit is poor sleep quality. This connection surprises most people, but the evidence is consistent and significant. Poor sleep, whether from insufficient hours, frequent waking, sleep apnea, or disrupted sleep cycles, directly reduces insulin sensitivity the following day. Studies have shown that even a single night of poor sleep can produce meaningful reductions in insulin sensitivity. comparable in some research to the effect of several weeks of a high-fat diet, when insulin sensitivity is further reduced by poor sleep. The dawn phenomenon has even more room to drive blood sugar higher. The liver releases glucose, the hormones rise, and the cells that should be absorbing that glucose are even less responsive than usual. Protecting sleep quality is not just a general wellness recommendation for people with type 2 diabetes. It is a direct intervention in overnight blood sugar control. The third hidden habit is what you drink before bed. Anything with added sugar, juice, sweetened tea, flavored milk, even a small amount of honey and herbal tea consumed in the hours before sleep adds a glucose load to your system at exactly the time when your body's ability to manage it is at its lowest. That glucose, imperfectly managed overnight, becomes part of the elevated baseline that the dawn phenomenon then pushes even higher. The fourth hidden habit is going to bed at inconsistent times. Your body's hormonal rhythms, including the cortisol and growth hormone surges that drive the dawn phenomenon, operate on a predictable internal clock. When your sleep schedule varies significantly from night to night, those rhythms become disrupted and irregular hormonal patterns can make the dawn phenomenon less predictable and harder to manage. Consistency in your sleep schedule, going to bed and waking at roughly the same time each day, gives your body's internal clock the regularity it needs to operate more predictably, and predictability in those hormonal patterns makes morning blood sugar more manageable over time. None of these habits seem obviously connected to your morning glucose reading. That's precisely what makes them so easy to overlook for years. And that's exactly why understanding the connection changes everything. Now, let's talk about what you can actually do starting tonight to create better conditions for your body to manage the dawn phenomenon and produce lower, more stable fasting blood sugar readings. The first and most impactful change is adjusting your evening eating window. Aim to finish your last meal or snack at least 2 hours before you go to sleep, ideally 3. This isn't about restricting what you eat. It's about giving your body enough time to process the glucose from your last meal before the overnight hormonal processes begin. The earlier that glucose is cleared, the lower your starting point when the dawn phenomenon kicks in. The second change is a short walk after dinner. As we've discussed in previous videos, even 10 to 15 minutes of gentle movement after your evening meal can meaningfully reduce the post-meal blood sugar spike. When your muscles are active, they absorb glucose directly independently of insulin. This reduces the glucose load your body carries into the night and lowers the baseline from which overnight blood sugar management begins. The third change is protecting your sleep. Prioritize both the quantity and quality of your sleep. Create a consistent bedtime routine. Reduce screen exposure in the hour before bed. Blue light suppresses melatonin and disrupts the sleep cycles that are essential for insulin sensitivity the following day. Keep your bedroom cool and dark. And if you suspect you may have sleep apnea, which is significantly more common in people with type 2 diabetes and directly worsens overnight blood sugar control, speak with your doctor about evaluation and treatment. The fourth change is choosing your bedtime drink carefully. Plain water or plain unsweetened herbal tea are the choices that support your blood sugar goals in the evening. Anything with added sugar, even small amounts, creates a glucose response at the worst possible time for your metabolism. The fifth change is consistency, not perfection. Consistency, one better evening choice, made regularly over weeks and months, changes the metabolic environment in which your body operates overnight. And that changed environment shows up in your morning blood sugar readings, gradually, meaningfully, and in ways that compound over time. You don't need to change everything. You need to change one thing and keep changing it. If you've stayed with us through this entire video, you now understand something about your blood sugar while sleeping that most people with type 2 diabetes have never been given a clear explanation for. You understand why fasting blood sugar is always high, even without eating. You understand what the dawn phenomenon is and why it happens. You understand the role of liver glucose release, cortisol, and insulin resistance in creating those frustrating morning readings. And you understand which overnight habits that raise morning blood sugar may have been quietly shaping your results for years without you ever connecting them. That knowledge is not small. That knowledge is the foundation of real, sustainable change. Your morning blood sugar is not a mystery without a solution. It is the result of specific, identifiable processes that happen while you sleep, that are influenced by what you do before you sleep, and that you now have the tools to begin addressing. You are closer to better morning numbers than you think, not because of a miracle solution, but because now you know where to look. And in our next video, we are going to take this one step further, because there is a specific nighttime habit that millions of people do every single evening without ever questioning it. A habit so ordinary, so automatic, that it has never occurred to most people to connect it to their blood sugar. And yet, the evidence suggests it may be directly amplifying the exact processes we talked about today, making the dawn phenomenon worse, reducing overnight insulin sensitivity, and contributing to morning readings that feel impossible to explain. You probably do this habit too. And when you find out what it is, everything is going to make a lot more sense. Don't miss that video. It may be the piece you've been missing. Before you go, I want to ask you one simple question. Before watching this video, did you know what the dawn phenomenon was? Just yes or no in the comments below. That's it. Simple as that. Because your answer helps us understand what still needs to be explained, and it helps other people watching realize they are not alone in this. Your morning blood sugar has an explanation, and now you know what it is. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you in the next one.